From Manhattan, Kansas, it's time for Public Occurrences with Jason Beets, the online public affairs show with in-depth world news and analysis you won't find anywhere else.
Welcome to Public Occurrences. I'm Jason Beets.
And I'm Katie Watkins. Today we will be covering elections, breakaway regions, and the unfortunate fate of journalists across the globe.
The Kansas legislature has passed a bill that overturns city and county gun restrictions. The unified government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas, has prohibited the open and carrying of firearms. The bill would overturn that ban, with the exception of allowing cities and counties to prevent openly carried weapons inside public buildings. The bill also prevents cities and counties from enacting restrictions on the sale of firearms or ammunition, imposing rules on how guns must be stored or transported, or using tax dollars for gun buyback programs. Supporters of the bill say that the patchwork of local gun regulations frustrate gun owners and infringe on their right to bear arms. Opponents say that local officials know which policies are best for their communities. The bill has passed both houses of the Kansas legislature. The governor has not said whether or not he will sign the bill.
Venezuela has charged a jailed opposition leader with responsibility for ongoing anti-government demonstrations that began in February. Leopold Lopez has been charged with inciting violence, arson, damage to property, and conspiracy. He has been in jail since mid-February and is being held in solitary confinement. At the protest, riot police regularly fire tear gas at crowds of rock-throwing demonstrators. Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro has claimed that sharpshooters are among the protesters. Protesters say that they have been attacked by gangs of armed pro-government thugs. 39 people have died since the protests began. The protesters criticized Venezuela's high crime rate, high inflation, and shortages of essential goods. The protesters are also calling for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to resign. The father of a Venezuelan TV journalist says his daughter has been kidnapped by armed, masked men in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. Nairobi Pinto worked for the Global Vision news channel. Venezuelan police have not commented on this case.
7 million Afghans voted in the first round of elections to determine the successor to Afghan President Hamid Karzai. Al Jazeera is reporting that twice as many Afghans voted in this election than voted in the previous presidential election. 58% of eligible voters turned out to the polls, despite threats and attacks by the Taliban. The three frontrunners among the 8 candidates are Ashraf Ghani, a former World Bank official, Abdullah Abdullah, Karzai's foreign minister, who ran against him and lost in 2009, and Zalmay Rasool, who has the endorsement of outgoing President Hamid Karzai. All three frontrunners have promised to sign a security agreement with the United States that would allow thousands of U.S. and coalition troops to remain in Afghanistan after 2014, which Karzai has refused to do. Results will not be known for another 6 weeks. If no candidate scores over 50%, a runoff between the top 2 candidates will take place on May 28th. Spokesmen for the police and the governor of Khost province in Afghanistan say that an Afghan policeman opened fire upon 2 AP journalists, killing one and injuring the other. AP photographer Anja Niedringhaus was killed just hours before the Afghan presidential election. Niedringhaus was born in Germany and was based in Switzerland. Canadian AP correspondent Kathy Gannon was evacuated to the U.S. military base in Bagram, where she is receiving medical attention. A spokesman for Khost's governor says that officials are investigating the shooter's motivations. Taliban insurgents have infiltrated Afghan police and army units many times to stage deadly attacks on U.S. and international security personnel. Before her death, Niedringhaus covered most of the world's conflicts, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, and had been injured several times. On her first day in Sarajevo, Niedringhaus was hit by a sniper's bullet. In 1997, her foot was crushed and broken in 3 places by a police car while she was covering demonstrations in Belgrade. In Kosovo in 1998, Niedringhaus was blown out of a car by a grenade. In Albania in 1999, she was one of a group of journalists mistakenly bombed by NATO forces.
Journalists around the world have rallied to call for the release of 4 Al Jazeera journalists imprisoned in Egypt. Peter Gresta, Mohammed Fahmy, and Bear Mohammed were arrested in late December and have been in jail for over 3 months. They were charged with spreading false news and belonging to a terrorist group. They are accused of being members of the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been designated as a terrorist organization by Egypt's military-led interim government. Abdullah al-Shami has been detained for more than 6 months without charge and has been on a hunger strike since January 23rd. Al Jazeera rejects the charges against its employees and continues to call for their release. The network is not currently allowed to report from Egypt.
The anti-immigrant, anti-European Union National Front Party has won an unprecedented 11 mayoral elections in France. Marine Le Pen, the leader of the party, said that in cities where her party's candidates won, school cafeterias will no longer serve non-pork options, which generally went to Muslim and Jewish children. Eating pork is not allowed under Jewish and Muslim dietary laws. After a school in southwest France stopped offering an alternative meal in March 2013, parents offered to cook meals for their children and bring them to school. The mayor of the town dismissed the proposal, saying it was logistically hard to implement and ethically shocking. One of the National Front mayors recently elected in France is Robert Menard. Menard was one of the founders of the press freedom advocacy organization Reporters Without Borders. He supports the reintroduction of the death penalty in France and opposes same-sex marriage.
The Local is reporting that a Spanish member of parliament plays a gay sex tourist in an upcoming movie. The film contains explicit sex scenes. Tony Canto said, "I'm aware of the fact that I live in a society where it can be more shocking for politicians to show their backside than to steal or be paid under the table." Canto shot the movie a few months before he was elected to become a member of Spain's parliament. Canto told a Spanish news outlet, "If you're asking me if I would have played a gay character in sex scenes while being a member of parliament, the answer is yes."
Radio Free Asia is reporting that one of Vietnam's most prominent political prisoners has arrived in the United States after being released from a Vietnamese jail. Khu Hoi Ha Vu is a well-known legal expert who twice tried to sue Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung for abuse of power. Vu was arrested in November 2010 for writing articles calling for a multi-party state in Vietnam. He was convicted 5 months later for conducting propaganda against the state. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. The U.S. State Department said Vu's case raised questions about Vietnam's commitment to the rule of law and called for his immediate release. He was released less than 3.5 years into his sentence after his wife and human rights organizations raised concerns that he was not receiving adequate medical care for his heart problems and high blood pressure.
Human Rights Watch is reporting that dozens of people died in attacks by rival armed groups in the Central African Republic in February. The Seleka, a predominantly Muslim group, seized control of the capital Bangui in March 2013. Anti-Bolaka militias organized to fight the Seleka. Anti-Bolaka fighters target Muslim civilians because they see them as part of the Seleka or as their sympathizers. Anti-Bolaka militiamen often kill their victims with machetes.
Our next few stories are about regions around the world that are not happy with the country to which they belong. Radio Free Asia is reporting that more than 200 Uyghur refugees from China have been detained in Thailand. The Uyghurs are from China's Xinjiang province. Some Uyghurs want independence from China. The refugees were hiding in a rubber plantation while attempting to flee to Malaysia. Thai police took them to an immigration detention center. The Uyghurs told Thai authorities that they were from Turkey in order to avoid being sent back to China. China wants them to be returned. Many ethnic minority Uyghurs in China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region say they are subjected to political, cultural, and religious repression for opposing Chinese rule. Human Rights Watch says if the refugees are deported home, they face credible threats of torture. A Tibetan nun set herself on fire to protest Chinese rule over Tibet. Other Tibetans intervened to put out the fire and sent her to a hospital. Anonymous sources tell Radio Free Asia that the nun's name is Drolma. She is the 130th Tibetan to set him or herself on fire in support of Tibetan independence.
Spain's parliament has rejected a request by the Spanish region of Catalonia to hold a referendum of independence. Catalonia's president, Artur Mas, plans for the region to hold elections for independence in September without the permission of Spain's national parliament. This September will be the 300th anniversary of Spain, bringing the region under tighter control after Catalonia backed the losing rival in a war for the Spanish throne against King Philip V.
Deputies in the Ukrainian parliament exchanged punches after a communist leader accused nationalists of playing into the hands of Russia by adopting extreme tactics early in the Ukrainian crisis. Reuters reports that two deputies from the Svoboda Nationalist Party took exception to the charges by communist Petro Simonenko and seized him while he was talking from the rostrum. His party supporters rallied to his defense and a brawl broke out with deputies from other parties joining in and trading punches. Simonenko stirred nationalist anger when, referring to pro-Russian protesters who seized buildings in eastern Ukraine, he said that nationalists had set a precedent earlier this year by seizing public buildings in protest at the rule of ousted President Viktor Yanukovych. Now, he said, armed groups were attacking people who wanted to defend their rights by peaceful means. He said, "You are today doing everything to intimidate people. You arrest people, start fighting people who have a different point of view." He was then pulled away from the rostrum by Svoboda deputies. Simonenko did not appear to have been hurt in the brawl involving other deputies, but one deputy later resumed his seat in the chamber with scratches on his face clearly showing. The communists backed Yanukovych and his region's party through the 3 months leading up to him fleeing the country on February 21st, following large protests that criticized his decision to turn down a trade deal with the European Union in exchange for closer ties with Russia.
Radio Free Europe is reporting that pro-Russian protesters have seized control of the administrative building of the regional government of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. The protesters organized a temporary government and approved a measure to organize a vote on independence for the region to take place before May 11th. The building's previous occupants, the regional council, declared the interim government's vote for a referendum illegal. The mayor of the city declared the vote illegal as well. This standoff follows the annexation of the formerly Ukrainian province of Crimea by Russia in March.
The BBC is reporting that the daughter of Uzbekistan's dictator has been placed under house arrest in her own country. Just a few years ago, Gulnara Karimova was one of the most powerful people in the Central Asian country. She was a pop star, Uzbekistan's UN ambassador, and was discussed as a potential successor to her father. She is believed to have been in charge of the company Zero Max, which published profits of $3 to $4 billion a year before it was shut down in 2010. Kamilodin Rabimov, a political analyst who formerly worked for Karimova's father, Islam Karimov, said that she monopolized entire sections of the economy. She was sucking away so many resources that she single-handedly created a budget deficit. In 2012, Swedish journalists reported that the Finnish-Swedish telecommunications company, Telisonera, paid $300 million in order to enter Uzbekistan's mobile phone market. The money went to a company believed to be connected to Karimova. Swedish and Swiss prosecutors have taken on the case. Swiss Attorney General Michael Lebert said that Karimova's diplomatic immunity had previously prevented him from pursuing the case while she was Uzbekistan's ambassador to the United Nations. In late 2013, Karimova's charity, TV stations, and stores were shut down. She tweeted, "This looks like a serious attack on civic organizations and on thinking society as a whole." Karimova accused her younger sister and mother of using black magic to plot against her. She also said that the man in charge of Uzbekistan's equivalent of the CIA, Rustem Inoyatov, is behind her downfall. Karimova's father, Islam Karimov, is 76 years old. He is the only leader that Uzbekistan has had in its 22 years of independence. His successor will no doubt have incredible power in the Central Asian country.
And now for some lighter news. A guilt-ridden Dine and Dasher returned to pay his restaurant bill 70 years after the fact. The man was 10 years old in 1941 when he and his friend realized that they did not have the $1 they needed to pay for their meal. The now 80-something was so embarrassed about his misdeed that he sent his daughter into Lamb's Grill in Salt Lake City, Utah, with a $5 bill to settle his debt. The owner of the restaurant will be giving the $5 to its previous owners.
In March, a man handcuffed himself to the Des Plaines Oasis Highway Rest Area in Illinois to protest its demolition. Kevin Walters said that he was conceived there. He told a local radio reporter, "It is a weird story, I must admit. About 21 years ago, my parents were at a Phil Collins concert here in Chicago, and one thing led to another. They ended up at the Oasis, and I was conceived there." The rest area housed several fast food restaurants and is being demolished to widen the tollway it served.
A Los Angeles court has sentenced a Norwegian man to 11 years in prison. Walid Ahmed falsely claimed to own the rights to Justin Bieber concerts in Scandinavia in order to con an American investor out of $1 million. Ahmed pled guilty to the charges. Walid Ahmed previously claimed to have plans to create a solar-powered phone cover charger that had already been invented by someone else. In 2013, a Norwegian court found him guilty of swindling a Swiss investor out of $590,000. He has also been charged with insurance fraud after allegedly falsely claiming his car had been stolen. Another Norwegian has made world headlines after deciding to tattoo a McDonald's receipt on his arm. Stian Yitterdal said, "A couple of my friends said I had been a little too active towards the ladies lately and wanted to punish me. They said I either had to get a Barbie tattoo on my ass or the receipt on my arm." Yitterdal also said, "Now I'm a living billboard. But I think it's all just fun. Maybe it won't be fun when I'm 50 or 60 years old. But that's my choice." He wrote on Facebook, "Tattooing a McDonald's receipt on your arm is actually quite absurdly cool." Yitterdal had the receipt from his McDonald's tattoo tattooed on his other arm. I'm not making this up.
A 21-year-old Spanish woman fell to the bottom of a well while having sex. It is believed that she and her lover inadvertently loosened the boards covering the well while making love and were too distracted to notice the impending peril. Emergency services later received an anonymous call, which they believe was made by the woman's romantic partner, who did not return to the scene of the accident. The young woman was not wearing underwear when she was rescued by firefighters. She was taken to a hospital to be treated for symptoms of hypothermia and has since been released. Firefighters issued a public statement asking young people in the area to be careful while partying because many of the water wheel shafts in the area are similar to the one that ended this young couple's passionate embrace. If you enjoy public occurrences, we know several other projects you might enjoy.
Jason and I are both part of Channel 8 News, a weekly student-run newscast at Kansas State University. Here is a link to the YouTube channel of Channel 8 News.
My friend Ben Dietrich hosts a blues podcast that you can listen to at bluesdjben.podomatic.com. I have profiled over 30 of the prisoners at Guantanamo on my blog jasonbeets.blogspot.com. The links for these projects are in the description below.
What are your thoughts on the stories in this episode?
Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Public Occurrences.